All right, so for the second file here, we are going to use layer masks, okay, to place something here with the sign. All right, so I want to select this sign, leave the screws here, okay, and I'm going to, instead of deleting it, deleting out the space and pasting something there, I want to go ahead and make a layer mask and place something behind it. Right. Now, the first thing I always do in every file that I'm working on is I want to make sure I keep an original of my layer, just in case I screw something up later and I go, oh my gosh, right? So the easiest way to do that is just to copy that by, you can either copy the layer multiple ways. I usually just drag it down to the new layer button, and I'm going to turn off the background. Okay. Either way, you need to make sure the background is unlocked. All right, so here I'm on my background copy. I'm going to go ahead and make rectangular marquee, move it into place, kind of like that. All right, and now I'm going to enter quick mask mode by hitting Q. Okay. Now what I want to do is trim the corners and erase right where the screws are so they stay there. Right, so here's where I can zoom in. Right, just grab my eraser tool, trim the corners. If I trim too much, I'm just going to grab my brush. Right, paint the corner back in. All right, I'm going to erase right over top of where the screw is. Down here as well. All right, great. Now I'm in exit quick mask mode and I've made a selection where I have deselected the screws. Now, your layer mask is located down at the bottom of your layers palette. You have that little chain, the FX, and then next to that is the button. If you hover over top, add layer mask. Now you'll notice what happens if I add layer mask. It masked out everything but the selection, which is fine. Because you'll notice, hopefully one of the things that you should have, and if you don't have it, go to Window, okay? And make sure you have your properties up. It should pop up right here. There's a button that says invert, and if you do that, it's going to flip it. Okay. Now the other way to do that, let me step back, is once I've made the selection, I can invert the selection, and then I can make my layer mask. You invert your selection by either select inverse or Command or Control Shift I. Okay, and make sure you got to hold Command or Control Shift I. If you just do Command I or Control I, it will invert the color, which is not what we want to do. So I've inverted my selection. I'm going to go ahead and make my layer mask. All right, great. Now what I want you to do is to go ahead and paste in whatever you want. So in this case, I am going to bring in a skull. Okay, it's good size, right? So I'm going to go ahead and transform it a little bit, scale it down. All right. And then all I have to do is drag it behind that layer, right? And now it sits inside of my layer mask. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer, pull it behind the skull, and I'm just going to fill it with some type of color. All right, there you go. Okay, so you'll notice a couple things about the layer mask I want to point out. Layer mask works on black conceals, white reveals, right? So I can turn my layer mask off. Okay, if I right click and I can disable my layer mask, right, it goes back to what it was before. Right click, I can enable it. Okay, so it's not deleting anything. All it's doing is hiding. Now, layer mask also works on opacity, right? So even though I'm at 100% black here, if I took my brush, let's say I set my foreground color to like a lighter gray, okay? When I brush, you'll notice, right, I lose some of that opacity. Okay, I'm going to reset it to black. Oops, went too far. Okay, and go ahead and color that back out. Okay, so from 0 to 100, a layer mask can reveal what is underneath or partially what is underneath. Okay, so this is why they're much stronger, okay, and a whole lot better than using an eraser. Right. So you notice there is a link between the layer mask, right, and whatever it's concealing. If I turn that off, okay, and again I'm on my layer mask, I can move my layer mask around, right? So you'll notice it's masked out, right? If I have the link on, right, and I try and move this, it's going to move the whole image, right? So sometimes it's good, you'll want to link them usually, sometimes you want to move it, right, and you don't need the link there. All right, so on the next one, on the polygonal lasso, okay, here is an instance where making the selection, okay, it's not your marquee tool doesn't work really well, okay, and even using your quick mask is not necessarily the greatest. This is one where using the polygonal lasso tool, okay, is going to make it a lot easier to select this. Now the thing to note too with all of this, oops, we can hold down shift and just add to it, is unless this is going to be a super high resolution print and somebody is looking at it like with a magnifying glass, it's like, you ever hear the phrase horseshoes and hand grenades? You just have to be close with a horseshoe or a hand grenade. Okay. So what I want you to do on this one is I want you to go ahead, use your polygonal lasso tool and make a layer mask and put something in here as well. Okay. So I showed you how to on the first one. On the second one, I want you to kind of do it yourself. And then we're going to get a little bit more into quick mask and refine edges.